Welcome to Breathe California TV. My name is Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer for Breathe California here in the South Bay. Each week we try to present a program for you on preventing damage to your lungs. One of the most significant people in helping that happen is Councilman Rocha from San Jose. We're going to talk with him about programs the city's done to both improve your health and make a better environment. See you in 30 seconds.
The nice thing about Better Breathers Club is we go in and there's other people sitting around with oxygen. It's almost a relief that everybody looks the same in the room. It's a funny thing to say, but it's a good feeling. Breathe California means having resources available to us that will help guide us and make our lives easier.
Welcome back to Breathe California TV. I'm the chair of our prevention committee, so we focus on stopping your lungs from being damaged, either through preventing smoking, controlling smoking, or air pollution are our two dominant areas. But most of our resources are spent on helping people with breathing difficulties, like you saw in the asthma camp. Last year, we helped 150,000 people in this county with breathing difficulties. But fortunately, today we get to focus on prevention. So I'm with Councilman Rocha from San Jose. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
So what area of San Jose do you represent?
It's identified as the District 9 area, oftentimes called Cambrian. Some of the boundaries, not formal, is generally Bascom, Blossom Hill, Almaden Expressway, up Kirtner. Again, that's not a perfect example, but that's the general area.
So you've been on council 4 years. You got some things you feel good about?
Yeah, I love the work and I love the policy work. Public service is something I've been doing for a long time, and I don't see myself doing anything else.
So off air, we were talking about the wonderful, relatively new for cities, controls that you put on smoking in parks. What's that all about?
Oh, that was really good work. But as, again, you mentioned us just talking offline a little bit, I put a lot of credit on the advocacy groups, Breathe California and some of the nonprofits that have really promoted some of these policies and approached cities about adopting these. Really, they're the heroes in this. Yes, we do the work at the back end and adopt these policies, and in some cases it may be a difficult vote. But at the end of the day, this is all good stuff, and really the credit goes to a lot of other folks outside City Hall.
So how in the world are you going to get elected being this modest?
Well, great question.
Really
I don't have an answer for that
really,
one.
Really
Stumped me already.
But that does tell our listeners a lot about the process. Yesterday I spoke at a local high school, and in my speech saying, you make a difference. Go out and participate. You'll be astounded at how responsive the world is. Is that fit for what your view of things is?
Yeah, it is. You could say that in some cases, if a policy gets to the council, that it's already a done deal, and folks have used that phrase quite often. And in some cases may be true, but in often cases that's not always true, and especially on the front end. If it gets to the council in that form, the work on the front end is so critical, and that's why getting involved, like you just talked about, is really important.
So the front end might be anybody who's listening to us just going in, making an appointment at your office and bringing up a problem.
Yeah, leaf blowers is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of folks in the district in San Jose that approached the office and met with myself and another council member and talked about the pollution coming from the gas blowers and talked about using electrical ones. And lo and behold, Councilmember Collier, I think, is pursuing that. And that just came from a resident saying, you know what, the noise and the pollution, I'm tired of it, do something. So yeah, it can work.
Yeah, and those things make a big difference, either reducing noise in your neighborhood, which impacts mental attitudes, cuts down on road rage, and any of a whole bunch of neighbor
Yes.
problems just by having less noise, as well as the obvious pollution problems, makes a difference. Well, your council adopted a brand new general plan. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that, and are you happy with it, unhappy with it?
Well, I think it was a paradigm shift. Mm-hmm. And with paradigm shifts, there's a little bit of uncomfortableness that often accompanies that. starting something out of the gate and suggesting where we focus our development, pulling back urban sprawl, urban village concept, moving some of the density of housing downtown in North San Jose near our employment centers, all good things. So I think it's a paradigm shift. Now the hard part is getting the developers and the property owners, the folks who own the property are the ones who have to invest in it, to buy into it. And that means that elected officials and planning staff have to hold the line on some of these planning principles and stick to them. And that's going to be where the real work comes. Yes, that process took a lot of time to adopt that general plan, and a lot of community folks put some work into it. But again, there's still work to be done, and that's just simply holding the line on some of these planning principles.
Yeah, and it's real tough when you have developers who may have put a lot of money into developing someplace that is sprawl, and you guys are trying to rein that in.
Yeah, the focus on doing development and housing around, and even jobs around transit lines such as bus, light rail, the new BART station, and then again the downtown core. We want to create that urban environment. So yeah, there's some folks who might have some properties in other areas that are also looking for conversions in employment areas. And yeah, they have spent a lot of money, and they're going to make a strong case that we should be doing other types of development than probably the city wants to see. But again, it's holding that line is the hard part.
So you mentioned urban village. I'm not entirely sure I know what it is, so I suspect some of our audience doesn't. What is it?
Well, given that we haven't done one yet, you could say that we don't know either in the city of San Jose. Right now we're working on that. So we're trying to define what an urban village would look like. We have the concepts around it. Consultants have done some kind of layouts to show us what it is. It's the density levels that we're still trying to work through. And the other side of that is also the financing around it. We've got to make sure that it pencils for a property owner. Otherwise, we can put it on a pretty piece of paper, and they're not going to invest in that site. So the urban villages are set up, as I mentioned, around bus lines, light rail lines, BART, and in the downtown core. And they're a corridor, so to speak, where we're going to intensify development and try and place some jobs near housing, and then also some retail. So you're trying to create an environment where folks can walk to work, walk to dinner, walk to lunch, walk to their house. So it's again going to be a long process. This was a General Plan 2040, so it's not going to happen overnight, but it's exciting stuff.
So Terry Christensen, a retired poli-sci professor, was on this show a couple of months ago talking about the neighborhood working cooperatively with all sorts of groups for one of these urban villages, not in your district, roughly where Santa Clara hits 101. Is that kind of going to be a model? It's where the BART station is. Does the things they're doing there work as a model for other areas?
Yeah, that one, there's another one in Mountain View, and I think Cupertino have done some on a smaller scale. The Hitachi development out in South San Jose is one that we're looking at as somewhat of a model. But again, right now we're going through the process. Some of the struggles that I've had with it, which I didn't allude to, was the level of density that we're talking about in some of these cases. And you may have residential units around them. And I don't know if every resident in San Jose paid attention to the general plan update. And I don't know if every resident...
You don't think all 1,050,000 or whatever they are paid attention?
No, I don't think they're watching that council meeting. So they may not know what level of density that the city is considering for a property that might be pretty darn close to their house. So the work not only is holding the line, working with the development community, it's going to be working with the existing residents that are around these areas as well.
Yeah, that's imperative. For me, it's easy to point to. My city had a special, I live in Palo Alto, and there was a very modest increase in development on El Camino, which is the high transit street in the city other than the Caltrain. And boy, they got no neighborhood, made no attempt to talk to the neighborhood, and were blown out of the water and lost like 55-45 on a referendum. It doesn't do you any good to have a great plan if you haven't got the neighborhood with you.
Yeah, just coincidentally, I think it was 2 nights ago that we had a community meeting in my district around an urban village property, the Cambrian Park Plaza at the corner of Union and Camden. And the property owner put it up for sale, and it's in an urban village, and the property has not been sold. The developer has not submitted any plans, but I had an interest in getting in front of the issue because we got a lot of calls from the residents asking what's going to happen with it, what's going to happen with it. And we went out there and told them, well, at this point, nothing's happening with it, but it is in an urban village area. And just so you know, this is what the development could look like. And of course, you had a lot of folks saying that density is really off the charts, and you had a lot of folks saying, well, it'd be nice to have a here's, well, what's they call it, a there, so to speak, for Cambrian. So you had a lot of mixed messages, but again, I think it was valuable for the planning staff that were there to see the type of feedback they can expect as we start going down this path.
Well, it's a rare councilman that would create controversy. But that is absolutely the best thing you can do, rather than having the developer spend millions and then discover the community doesn't like it.
Great point. There was actually one of the folks who submitted a bid. I think there was a lot of bids, but there's one developer who at the end introduced himself. I think he waited to the end because he's a little nervous and said that he put a bid in and said he was very happy that he showed up to hear the feedback. So I think you only get better outcomes by engaging the public and the community, truly.
Well, off air, you met one of my students, and we're doing a pretend mediation in his environmental law class today. And one of the reasons I have them do it is to understand that development doesn't need to be hostile with a developer, and pejoratively they call NIMBYs, being the people in the area, that the best thing a developer can do is get out and start talking to people.
Well put. It's a great point. I believe in it wholeheartedly. It may be painful on the front end, but the closer you get to the process playing out, everybody's going to understand points of views a lot better for having the conversation.
So you already raised one of the issues that I would think your district has. Unlike most of the city, you don't really have an urban core center the way you would in downtown San Jose or Willow Glen might have. Can you create that with the urban village or 2 or 3 or 4?
You could, to a certain level. I believe you can. As you pointed out, my district is a little bit different than a lot of the other ones in the sense that it's truly suburbia. Yeah. There's no really job employment center. There's no downtown area. It is suburbia at its best. So that would be a little bit of a paradigm shift, using that phrase again, for some of the residents in my district, because they probably moved to suburbia to be in suburbia. So to bring urban living to them might not be as well received, at least immediately. Yeah,
and I understand that, and yet over the long term, I don't know that our use of cars is as sustainable as we might like 20 years from now, but most people are far more focused on where they are right now than that. So we're about halfway through the show. We're going to take a break and hear another message from Breathe California, and then we'll be back with Councilman Don Rocha.
I have asthma, and so asthma, I can't do that many sports because I wheeze and then I have to take my inhaler. I can't do a lot of things other kids can do. What I learned at asthma camp is how to treat your asthma and don't hold back if you have asthma. Breathe California has made it easier for me to play sports and do other things that I couldn't do before.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. My name is Terry Trumbull. I'm with San Jose Councilman Don Rocha. So one of the things that strikes me about the new general plan is its focus on alternative forms of transportation, making it easier for people to bike and walk.
Yeah, that's, again, overplaying the word paradigm shift. We're trying to force the issue in many different ways, creating bike lanes where there isn't, bigger sidewalks to encourage pedestrian use, trying to eliminate some of those large setbacks and bring the development up to the front so pedestrians feel a little bit more comfortable walking down and just don't have open space like you sometimes see in North San Jose especially.
It isn't just San Jose, but the paradigm I think you're talking about shifting from is virtually every land use plan in the state before, say, 2000 said the only way to get around is a car. We're seeing downtown San Jose lane changes. Are they throughout the city, or is it just more of a focus on downtown areas where I happen to be all the time?
Yeah, we're starting in downtown. We're looking at other areas of the city, bike pathways we're talking about, but I think another critical part of this is the work on trails and finishing our trail system to not just for pedestrians to walk and just have a nice place to get outside. But the other part is the biking. So folks have a way to work and they don't have to ride on the streets where we may not have a complete network of bike lanes. So that's another component that I think really we should be focusing a little bit more of our attention on, as I can't tell you how often folks in my district, again suburbia, talk about opportunities to ride their bikes, and there just isn't, because we've got mainly just thoroughfares of folks commuting.
Any significant creeks, because a number of areas in the city have converted those into trails and bikeways as well.
Yeah, we've got plans on the books for pretty much all of them. There is one that shoots out along Highway 87 that we're discussing, which might be a new opportunity. The Water District's going to have to be a partner in that quite often. And they've been good. They've gotten a lot better over the years, and I think they're a lot more proactive around that. So they've been great partners on this.
Yeah, I sit on the oversight committee for the tax expenditures that we voted on in 2012, and at least compared to our goals, what we promised the voters would happen, the trails along bikeways have really proceeded well. And that's really a compliment to the cities. Nothing happens with that money. The Water District will make its stream beds isn't right, banks available, but it's up to cities to petition, and then the Water District allocates money for doing that.
Yeah.
Anything else on smoking that you can think of besides smoking in parks? Have you guys done any other controls you can think of?
Oh, the high density, the common areas around that.
Yeah.
That was another effort, again, probably initiated from some advocacy groups, and I think Councilman Rocha, again, probably was the leader on the council, at least initially, to get that through. That was a great move. Secondhand smoke, some folks showed us some studies about the impact. It's not just immediate standing next to somebody. The travel of the smoke can also impact folks. And then in high density housing, it can go through the vents, it can go through the ceiling, it's stuck in the carpet, it trickles out the windows, goes to the neighbor. So the impact was significant. So, you know, some of those issues, there's still work to be done, don't get me wrong. And I think the City of San Jose will probably be a leader again on a number of these issues, but that was a great effort on our part. And
well,
glad we did it.
Every time that you guys take it up, it serves the biggest single benefit is education.
Yeah.
1988 or so, we had 25% smoking, and we're down to 8% of adults smoking now. That's I think we're the second best county in the state. Don't ask me who's first, but that rate of smoking is really an immense improvement for everybody, not just the smokers.
Yeah. And then now we have this issue with our youth and these e-cigarettes and the vapors. I mean, those are new to me, so that might be another path that you'll see the City of San Jose way down. I think we've got a referral to staff to look at the issue, because we've had some residents, mainly parents, talking about their kids potentially using it and seeing it in the high schools or with high school kids. So there's another frontier that we're going to probably have to weigh down and see what we can do. Again, it's like I said, our work is not done.
Yeah, there's state legislation on, I don't even know where the name e-cigarettes come from. It certainly has nothing to do with electronics, but maybe that makes it sound jazzier. It's just something that releases vapor. But they're every bit as bad as cigarettes, but nobody's very prepared for it.
No.
There's a bill in the legislature that I think will significantly regulate them and put warnings on them like regular cigarettes, but it's going to take councils like yours to adopt steps above and beyond that. Things like sales.
Yeah.
Mayor Gonzalez and I held a press conference where the police did a special effort just to try to catch tobacco sellers that were selling to minors on a regular basis, and that was a very nice program. The city had just to slow down the retailers doing it illegally, and we may need to do something like that on e-cigarettes.
I do recall that was a very successful effort. I think you're right. I mean, that's probably in our future, and we could be dealing with that around medicinal marijuana collectives as well, too. I mean, our work never ends.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that. You were up till 11:30 or something last night on medicinal marijuana. And I gather you don't even have regulatory authority on what's in those cigarettes. It's just, in medical marijuana, you just decide whether you want to have programs in clinics. Do you how much discretion do you have?
Well, our authority really is in the land use, so we could ban them just outright, that they're not allowed to locate in San Jose. But given the level of support for the Compassionate Use Act, we felt compelled to not follow the path of other cities who banned them and try and create an environment where we could have some collectives. Unfortunately, the proliferation got out of hand, and we're playing catch up right now, so it's a difficult issue. But I think we're going to make some headway. We will be taking the final action next Tuesday, May 20th.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that there's legitimate uses for it. But outside of your domain is that you watch films like Botany of Desire, which was a book before, and with the contents not being regulated, it's far more severe a lung impact than cigarettes are on people. Just, the Food and Drug Administration doesn't regulate it like they do cigarettes, but that's pretty much outside of your control.
Which is why we need help from the state and feds on this issue, and leaving it to cities to try and manage this and establish regulations is really, in my opinion, a failure at the state and federal level. So we always talk about those folks stepping up and helping us and reach out and ask, and action has been slow to come.
If any.
Yes.
I'm kind of aware of this. You may not know, my wife was a federal judge for 24 years, and their law still prohibits it.
Yes.
So, a federal DEA agent can stand outside the door of a medical marijuana facility and arrest everybody that comes out of it. I had that happen to a student. He went to Yosemite for a national parks class, and a ranger arrested him for smoking marijuana when he had a medical marijuana certificate, because the feds can do it. So let's switch to plastic bags. We're doing in my environmental law class an ocean segment next week, and I would think every one of them is very happy at what you guys have done. So tell our audience what the city did with plastic bags.
That one actually happened before I got in office, so I came in after the council adopted it. So I got to hear all of the residents' complaints and also the folks who are a little more progressives. Congratulations on it. I think it was a great thing the city of San Jose did. We were seeing it, as I understand it. We all saw it. Waterways, streets, gutters, and it was clogging up drains. So it was causing a significant environmental impact, in my opinion, and I think the research showed it. So when we adopted the ban, we established some process. I think we phased it in over a certain period, and it's been nothing but good for us. I mean, even the recyclers that were doing the garbage and the recycling for the city of San Jose were having those things tear up their machinery, so there was really no good outcome. Well, on top of that, we have the Regional Water Quality Control Board looking to us to reduce our litter, and that was another component that we can reduce litter on. So it's been nothing but a good thing for San Jose, in my opinion.
Yeah, and ultimately getting it, because they're on the city's back over the streams and creeks, but in the bay or out in the ocean is pretty dramatic. There are 5 enormous areas bigger than Texas in the oceans of the world where it's just plastics going around and around because they never disappear, but they do a great job of killing birds and fish. So nothing but praise for that one. Do you see anything similar coming down in other types of plastics?
Well, we
styrofoam.
we did our polystyrene ban as well. So those 2 efforts, and that one was done when I was on the council, and that was a good 1.5-year process. Had to reach out to the stakeholders, the businesses that were going to be impacted, and really do our work. And the community engagement, honestly, at the end of the day, was very valuable, because by the time we got to that vote on the council, really the industry that was left really kind of fighting it didn't really concede it, but they did not throw down and challenge it, did not do a ballot initiative, citizen initiative, and trying to overturn it. They just recognized that this is generally the way that we're all going with the environment. So I think it was another good outcome on San Jose's behalf.
So the Regional Water Quality Control Board, I praise them for it, but they've been doing some things that most people might not have thought was water pollution. One was the plastic bags. The other was that they're threatening San Jose over activities of the homeless in the creeks. Any comments about that, or where San Jose can go to fix this? Homeless has got to be the worst problem for any city to cope with.
Well, the homeless issue, 1's outside the scope of this, and 2, I'm looking to punt, because if I had an answer to that, I'd be in a much higher office, because that issue has been challenging San Jose and other communities for a long time, and I don't have any solution in front of me. As far as the Regional Water Quality Control Board and their interest in that, it really went back to the litter and the impact on the waterways. And they were getting on the city of San Jose, well-founded, for us to step up and clean up some of these sites. I mean, it wasn't about housing the homeless, it wasn't about the folks and what they were causing, it was the impact purely on the environment, and we needed to mitigate that. And not that I welcomed it with open arms, but I wasn't going to shy away from it. They were right to call us on it.
Yeah, and it's clearly a significant problem for some areas of the city, you know, and
Yes.
It's just one of those issues that haven't talked to a lot of council candidates. No one seems to have any good answers for, because homeless is a far bigger problem than just a creek pollution one.
Yeah, well put. It's about housing and finding affordable housing in this region, in this part of the country. That's our biggest challenge. So working on the homeless issue is really truly working about affordable housing.
Well, and they can probably get away with it, but my city's actually petitioning or trying to work with groups to change Prop 13 to encourage more housing by restructuring the way it's taxed, because it clearly causes city money cities lose money if they allow housing to be built. So it's a real tough issue to cope with.
That one and CEQA reform at the state level, those two issues I think would be huge movements for California, and wherever those issues go, I just think we should be talking about it, and we should be nudging our elected officials at the state level to find some action. I'm not going to define what it should look like, but they need to move on it, because I think there's some opportunities for California to be in a better place.
Yeah, and expand a little bit more on CEQA. For audience, this is the California Environmental Quality Act. And any government, local special district like the water district or the state, needs to evaluate environmental impacts before making a decision. And there's a lot of push to change that. So what's your experience with the city? What kind of problems would you say the law has been creating?
You know, I have a different view of it, and I'm generally pretty pro-development, but I don't think CEQA's really been a major problem. Could it use some, I guess you can use reform. I'd rather use the word modification. Sure. I mean, any legislation that's a decade, 20, 30, 40 years old, times change, land use principles change, and we should take a look at maybe some modifications around it. It has been used in some forms that was not its intent, but you know, that, as any law, has happened across the board, so I'm not going to hold that purely on CEQA's back. So I think we should be looking at some modification.
So I'm, in general, pretty much in agreement with you. My sense is that the problems are more with developers not talking to the residents or not addressing the concerns, because it's rarely the environmental impact report itself that presents a problem. It's that people don't want the development, period. But I probably didn't help myself. I was interviewed for an environmental job with the governor about 3 years ago, and they asked me what I thought, and I said that. And the governor clearly had some bad experiences with Oakland, where he's not quite as level, let's put it that way, as you and I are on the issue. So I think we will see some changes. So what else in San Jose in terms of environmental or resource issues should we be talking about?
You know, we covered a lot of the main issues that we've been working on. Our green building efforts around new development and how buildings are being built and homes are being built, and trying to be environmentally conscious, I think, is a new frontier for us and a frontier for many communities. And I think that's some opportunity for everybody to work together on.
I think that's a great wrap-up, because we're out of time. So thanks for watching Breathe California TV, and we'll see you again next week. Welcome to Breathe California TV. My name's Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer with Breathe California, the lung health organization in California. So we're going to talk about asthma and in particular children's health today. It's a big issue, especially here in the Bay Area. The air quality and smoking have a lot to do with lung health diseases. We're going to be talking with Scott Kessler, who's an expert on children's asthma. We're going to talk about his collaborative that's trying to work to make life better for you and your kids. See you in 30 seconds.
I have asthma, and so asthma, like, I can't do that many sports because I like wheeze and then I have to take my inhaler. I can't do a lot of things other kids can do. What I learned at asthma camp is how to treat your asthma and like don't hold back if you have asthma. Breathe California has made it easier for me to play sports and do other things that I couldn't do before.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. Breathe California is here to, for the most part, help people with breathing difficulties. I chair a committee that tries to prevent lung damage through controlling air pollution or reducing smoking. But today we're going to talk about asthma, breathing difficulty for children. So yesterday I was at a local high school teaching 5 health science classes, and about 25% of the students were having breathing difficulties. Scott Kessler is going to help us talk about all of that. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So your name right now has a real long CHAC set of initials in front of it, but we didn't have room to spell it out, so tell us what it is.
All right. Well, the acronym stands for the California School Environmental Health and Asthma Collaborative. And that is a statewide collaborative of government, health, and education leaders, professionals who are working to address asthma and environmental quality in California schools.
So why should we care about this in schools? You know, when I think of being young, all I can think of about is having health that I'm quite envious of now.
Well, that certainly is what one hopes for, but there are a great many students out there with asthma. In the K through 12 population, about 12.5% of California school-aged students are currently living with asthma. In some areas, you have a particularly high prevalence. For example, you will find classrooms around the state in particular areas where a third of the students, perhaps 40% of the students will have asthma. And when you can't breathe, nothing else works well.
So explain why the variance. What factors make it worse in one area and not in another area?
Well, there are a great many factors that influence whether or not how much of a student's health is affected by asthma. For example, there are a great many triggers, and that can be outdoor air pollution. It can be indoor triggers, things like mold or animal dander from pets. Cockroaches in some classrooms that are poorly maintained can trigger asthma attacks. Scents from aromas from school classroom supplies like markers and what have you can also trigger. Perfumes worn by students or teachers can trigger asthma attacks. And depending upon where you live, you will have a different collection of triggers, all of which can provoke an attack in somebody who has hypersensitivity in the respiratory system, which is what happens when you have asthma.
So if I pick up and move, because it's quite common for students to do that, from one area to another, how much of the problems of the old area can carry over? How much is the body capable of recovering if it's different in a new area?
Well, if somebody has asthma, their respiratory system is hypersensitized, and not everybody is affected by the same triggers. And so it might be the case that in one area, the outdoor air is affecting you very badly, or it could be indoor triggers like those I mentioned. And so it really depends on a case-by-case basis what is going to affect a particular student.
So I'm probably not going to stick to it because I'm going to view the children's issues broadly, but is your collaborative mostly focused on issues at schools, both indoor or out in play areas?
Yes, yes. The School Environmental Health and Asthma Collaborative, we're the only statewide organization working to address asthma in the school population, the K through 12 school population. And it's a large population. If you think of California having 10,000 K through 12 schools, public schools, in 1,000 school districts with 6.3 million students, and 12.5% of them have asthma, you realize you're dealing with a great many students.
So I teach at both Santa Clara and San Jose State, and all my students just finished doing an indoor air quality assessment. Mm-hmm. What kind of things are they going to run into? Obviously, these are in their homes, but let's, I guess, talk about schools. You mentioned those hazards. Do you go to, the members of the collaborative go to schools and do audits and work with them to clear up those problems?
Well, that's something that's interesting about the collaborative. We have 25 members. The organization started several years ago with 6 members, and that included the California Department of Public Health, California Department of Education, California Teachers Association, California School Nurses Organization, Regional Asthma Management and Prevention, and the EPA, US EPA Region 9. Now, all of these organizations and the additional 19 that have since joined the collaborative have resources and knowledge that is available for free to the school population. And there are those, like the US EPA, who will go into the schools and work with them to try to identify indoor asthma triggers and environmental quality issues and help them set up strategies to address those and either reduce or eliminate them. The triggers I mentioned before can be addressed in multiple ways, and all of our member organizations have certain resources that can be found at our website and can be made available to the schools for free.
Probably 5 or 6 of my interns, like CK Kando, you met while we were waiting, have been doing indoor air quality audits for schools. I originally recalled those were funded by US EPA, but I don't know who the more recent funding sources are. But what's your view of the success of those audits? Are they working well?
They are working well. The program that you're referring to is probably the US EPA Tools for Schools Indoor Air Quality Program. And that has been around for 15 or so years. It has been defunded in the last couple of years. However, all of their resources are still available, and if one were to call the US EPA Region 9 office in San Francisco or the regional office in Los Angeles, they can still get assistance from experts to address these problems. There are staff from the EPA who will work with them and even come out to the school and help them to identify and address problems.
We'll be back in 30 seconds and talk some more with Scott.
What it feels like to have an asthma attack is, well, you can't breathe and you can't tell anybody that you're having an asthma attack because you can hardly talk. You can maybe say 1 or 2 words, but you can't say much else. Breathe California has helped me come in contact with more asthmatics and more people who have the same case as I do. It's important to me because I don't feel like I'm alone in the fight against asthma.
Welcome back. I'm Terry Trumbull of Breathe California. I volunteer to try to help people breathe easier, which is the goal of Breathe California. Today we're talking with Scott Kessler of the California Children's Health Collaborative. I've left out 1 or 2 of the letters And the acronym, are you going to get shot with letting me get away with that?
No, there's no violence in our collaborative. It's the California School Environmental Health and Asthma Collaborative.
Yeah, so the school is a good way to get people focused on working in schools. So one of the things that just seems inherent in what you're saying is that good indoor air quality in schools depends on maintaining all of the equipment.
Absolutely. And so much of environmental quality in the classroom depends on the facilities departments within schools. And unfortunately, because of budget cuts over the last several years, there have been declining numbers of facilities professionals with schools. That said, it is essential that the environmental quality be maintained by facilities professionals, which includes the heating and air conditioning systems, the trash removal, cleaning dust from the rooms, making sure that household products, for example, that might trigger asthma attacks because of the chemicals contained in them, are not being brought in by teachers and other well-meaning individuals. And all of this typically falls to the facilities staff members. And it's very important that their numbers be maintained and that each of them is educated on what to look for and how to maintain the best environmental quality possible.
So it occurs to me we need to discuss indoor and outdoor quality. What are we talking about, and comparatively, which is worse?
Both are important.
Both are bad.
Both are bad when,
After all,
when they're bad.
we are breathing unhealthy air in at least the south end of the Bay Area.
Absolutely, and outdoor air is very definitely a key component when we're talking about asthma and respiratory health in general. There is smog that comes from industry, from highways. There's proliferation of wildfires that we're seeing more of each year. All of these are contributing to the air quality. Crop dusting, for example, in agricultural areas also contributes to the outdoor air quality. The indoor air quality in classrooms is going to be governed by the heating and ventilation system, which needs to be maintained in good repair. And then, of course, being sure that asthma triggers in the classroom are identified and reduced or eliminated.
So at the start of the show, you made a list of chemicals, often with toxics, that are used for cleaning or other purposes. Are there alternatives available? Do you try to get schools to switch to using other alternatives or changing their techniques?
Absolutely. And what you're alluding to is what is commonly called green cleaning, and what we sometimes call asthma safer cleaning. Because there are a lot of misnomers about green cleaning. Frequently you will hear or see on products that they are green or they are biodegradable, and some of these descriptions lead people mistakenly to believe that there are no chemicals in the products that are adverse to somebody's respiratory well-being, when that is in fact not the case. With green products, which you can find through organizations like Green Seal and Eco Logo, and also Design for the Environment through the US EPA, they have certified products, and they know that they trigger fewer asthma attacks or none at all, and those are the products that people want to be using. Frequently, the products that you will find on the shelf in grocery stores are not as safe and are not certified by these third-party certifiers like Green Seal, Eco Logo, and Design for the Environment.
So I assume part of what you're doing is trying to educate schools to switch to those products rather than having the guy that's responsible for cleaning a school just keep using the same old stuff that we did from the 50s.
Absolutely. And fortunately, green cleaning, the asthma safer cleaning products, they seem to be gaining some traction, that facilities directors are starting to ask for them, that the vendors that supply these products are carrying them now and making them available to schools. And so this is part of the good news. The more difficult issue is we have a huge population in California, and there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't want to overstate the successes. There's still a long way to go.
So, probably 15 years ago, San Jose tore down a classroom building, and I got stuck in a brand new portable that was hauled in. And I'm probably paranoid about indoor air quality issues, but even though there was a busy street outside, I left the doors open all the time. Schools have been doing the same thing, meaning that I'm shocked at the number of portables instead of permanent kinds of buildings. Are there special risks with portable structures?
Well, there have been, and there was an important study done a number of years ago by the California Department of Public Health about
I understand they're a
portable.
pretty good organization.
They're an outstanding organization. I strongly
Support.
recommend them at all
So I
times.
apologize, it was freebie, so
Right.
keep going.
And of course, I am an employee as well of the California Department of Public Health. The portable classrooms have at times had some real problems in their construction and some of the off-gassing that happens in the building components that are in there. Also, on occasion, sprinklers outside will spray against the walls. It'll cause a mold problem. Of course, mold is a potent asthma trigger. And so this is certainly an issue to address. However, I wouldn't say that in all cases portable classrooms are unhealthy.
So, since you brought up mold, I used to do this show with a guy who sold green products, and this is 10 years ago, and he didn't have enough demand, and so he switched into another area, which is cleaning tile. But he just used to go ballistic about how bad some of our chemicals could be. It was pretty significant to him. So I'm well aware that could kind of be an issue. What other kind of things do you have to worry about with schools?
Well, I sort of think about it as a two-sided issue. On the one hand, there's environmental health and dealing with the triggers that we've discussed. On the other side is asthma management, which is equally important. For those students who have asthma, and for that matter, anybody who has asthma, it's vitally important that the symptoms are recognized, that the student with asthma sees a physician and is diagnosed, and that they're provided with medications that can control the asthma so that the symptoms present less commonly or not at all. And this is a vitally important issue that everybody should be aware of. Sometimes when students have asthma, they will go to an emergency room. They will get an inhaler, which is called a quick relief inhaler or a rescue inhaler.
Because they're treating it as
Right.
if it was an emergency.
And they're treating the asthma attack when it occurs. But it's also incredibly important that people with asthma, especially with serious persistent asthma, that they have controller medications as well. And these medications are taken once or perhaps twice a day, also through an inhaler. And this will cause the students to be symptom-free, or certainly reduce the symptoms so that the rescue inhalers are not as necessary.
My recollection is that one of the difficulties you have is we weren't recognizing asthma as a separate medical problem until fairly recently. 15 to 20 years ago, there wasn't any data, and we even had a governor in the 90s veto an attempt to collect data. Are we able to monitor asthma-specific problems better now?
Absolutely. There has been an enormous focus on asthma really since the 1990s, and there have been a lot of resources that have been devoted to addressing asthma, both from the environmental and medical perspectives. And in that time, there's been a lot of data collected. We have an epidemiologist at the California Department of Public Health working specifically with our program, who interprets the data that is constantly coming in. And if viewers were interested, there is a burden of asthma report on the California Breathing California Department of Public Health website that has current data statewide broken down by counties. And for anybody who wants to know about what the data is as it relates to their particular area or statewide, that's an outstanding comprehensive resource.
So one of the problems I think people have is they know there's breathing difficulties, but can you explain to us what's an asthma problem, what's an allergy problem, what might be other breathing difficulties, particularly with regard to our kids?
Well, that can be a bit complicated. Certainly,
That's why I asked it.
frequently young people who have asthma also have allergies, food allergies, what have you. And so you will frequently see both of these conditions occurring concurrently. However, it is also possible to have asthma and not have the other, and vice versa. And the treatments for allergies, for example, food allergies and asthma, are quite different.
My perception, I keep, one of my students is producing this show, and he would love for you to just knock me down a peg and tell me I'm wrong, but my perception is asthma is really more a product of the industrial age, that it was pretty much unknown before, say, 1800, that it often is a product of difficulties with what's in the air. You're allowed to tell me I'm full of it.
I wouldn't dream of it. Certainly, the Industrial Revolution was likely to have had an enormous impact, and we know that much of the pollution that comes from industry exacerbates asthma, and in certain instances might cause asthma in somebody who otherwise wouldn't have it. Now, I'm not a historian. I do know that asthma did exist in the 19th century, and the levels of asthma, the prevalence of it, has increased and continues to increase to this day. And we believe that it is the chemicals in the environment that are having a big impact on this.
And that's got to be really tough, because keeping up with all the new invented chemicals is a pretty tough job. What's out there in the air is real difficult to stay on top of.
Absolutely, and this is why when we're talking about schools and the sort of products that can be used there, especially if we're talking about cleaning products, something of that sort, that third-party certified products from Green Seal that are certified by Green Seal Eco Logo, and in the case of pesticides designed for the environment from the US EPA, are so important. The information is out there. That's the good news. Asthma is prevalent. The asthma rates are increasing, but it can be effectively managed medically, and the products that are asthma safer and can prevent asthma attacks are available for everybody to find and use.
Well, and that certainly is great. It's just a matter of getting enough resources to everybody so that they can take care of their kids. So today's a really hot day.
Mm-hmm.
And that means, the Air District is called a Spare the Air Day, and we're going to have a lot of ozone. All of us are affected by that, but is asthma made worse? Is the effect on asthmatics worse by severe ozone than it is the general population?
Absolutely. Asthma, ozone is a potent asthma trigger, as are pollens in the outdoor air. And to be sure, on a hot day when the ozone levels are high, you're going to have more frequent asthma episodes in students. And this is also a reason why it's so important to be aware of what the air quality is, and that can generally be determined by visiting the website at the Air Quality District. It lets you know what the various levels are for particulate matter, ozone, pollens, what have you, in the air. And if the air quality is particularly bad, you're going to want to either reduce exertion during outdoor physical activity during the day, or in certain cases when it's especially bad, avoid outdoor activity altogether.
So it's not as germane because this program will be running at the start of summer, although I'm sure today everybody thinks we're midsummer. But in the winter, our biggest air quality problem is particulates, particularly from wood burning. What's the answer there? Are those particles harder for an asthmatic to cope with than the rest of us?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought that up because, for example, wood burning stoves or fireplaces emit an enormous number of particulates into the air. And so even in areas where pollution generally is not quite so serious and people feel that they don't need to pay attention to it because we have clean air, for example, if there are a lot of fires burning, this can trigger very potent asthma attacks, and definitely something to be aware of and avoided.
So Scott, we got about 15 seconds. You got a couple of sentence summary for me?
Well, asthma is prevalent, but there's good news. And the School Environmental Health and Asthma Collaborative, we have a website, which I believe is on the screen, and we have an enormous number of resources available for free to schools and any interested party. And I encourage anyone to visit that website or call me, email me, and I will be happy to put them in touch with any services or resources they might need.
So we're really happy to have this program. So check out everything that Scott's been telling you, and we'll have another great Breathe California program for you next week.